Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to Purchase Corner. I got Seth Toupal, correct?
Toupal.
Awesome. Toupal on Locked on Wild. We're going to go over the Wild the season this year, go over the top six. He had a great show. Definitely go check out Locked on Wild. He's got an awesome show. It was very interesting today. Just talking about the starting roster, the three goalie rotation. And you guys even talked about in division play. So I kind of wrote down those teams. It's not like you have an easy season, really stacked up against you when you're going Utah, which won their home opener, inaugural season, which was pretty amazing to see. St. Louis, probably up and coming more or less. Avs, of course. Avs will be really great. Stars, I think, will compete really deep this year again. You fall in there, Preds, with the changes that they made this offseason, which I think shocked a lot of us, and especially, I've been a Stammer fan for a long time, and I think I'm not going to lie, that one kind of blew me out of the water on this one. I just think that with them not actively trying to sign him, during that season, I think really, made him feel some sort of way in that he had to move on. So then you got the Jets, who made a run last year. Again, decent team, great goaltender. So you got to compete with that. And then the up and coming Hawks, I think adding depth in veteran leadership, really kind of maybe put them in let's see what they do this season. I think we know what Connor Bedard, is capable of at this point, and we'll see if he has a full healthy season. But I think one of the things I'll kind of start off the rip with is, Brock Faber. I think it's a huge conversation that I had with a lot of people. I actually think he should have won the Calder. And I'll give you a couple reasons. Not only was the 8 goals and 39 assists for 47 points and a -1 for the season, but this kid was logging an average of 24 to 26 minutes a night. And he finished with an average of 24 minutes and 58 seconds. Let's round it up to 25 every single night for this hockey club. And this guy finishes second. Now, I get it, but again, when you're looking at the caliber of player that he was during the season and what he provided your team, it's a little bit shocking that it went this way. So what's kind of your thoughts there? I'm sure all you Minnesota fans kind of feel the same way. But yeah, I'm just curious on what you guys think.
Well, you're right on. It's not even, to me, it's not even a question. He was the clear-cut winner, in my opinion, because look, Connor Bedard missed some games he missed a handful of games this past season with the broken jaw.
Mm-hmm.
Brock Faber played the entire final 2 months of the season with broken ribs. We as people that cover the team, nobody even knew about it until after the season was done. Like, I think the coaching staff knew, and I think they kind of kept it under wraps a little bit, but he didn't miss a game. And like you said, he played about 25 minutes a night. He had a 5 or 6 game stretch where he played 30 minutes plus per night.
Yep.
He was the number 1 guy in the power play. He was the number 1 defensive pairing. He played on the penalty kill. He was the top defenseman in overtime, because Jonas Brodin and Jared Spurgeon both missed time and actually missed games at the same time quite a bit. So he was asked to do everything, and he didn't miss a beat. Like, he stepped into all these different things. He had never run a power play before this past season, and he looked like he'd been doing it for his entire life.
Mm-hmm.
I think the thing that really jumps out to me is how accountable he was after games. Like, he always answered questions, always stepped up. Whether he made mistakes or not, he was always willing to step in and say, we have to be better. I have to be better. A lot of leadership for a rookie. And those are all things. And look, Connor Bedard is going to be a fantastic player.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, you look at all the different things that Faber did compared to what Bedard did, which was basically score and play the top line.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, it really wasn't even that close.
Yeah.
Shouldn't have been.
Yeah.
But
yeah, no, I'm in agreement with you. I'm just gonna say hello to some of the guests that kind of showed up. They have a fun little chat. They kind of go back and forth with each other. Lon Espinoza, Spine Tick, Sith, thank you so much. Appreciate you coming out. Uncanny Swag, Tim in the Box. He's got a great hockey card show. So this is like a mix of like hockey card community. Barry is always super positive. Zach's Collections is always ripping something. He had a fun rip today that I watched. Matty Ice. Love this marathon runner right here. He's a great dude. Troy's Cards. Appreciate you coming out. Paul, my best friend. He's like you, Seth. He every single night, every single game, he is watching. He's an absolute diehard. Dan Delatorre, appreciate you coming out. And the hobbyist, appreciate you coming out as well. I know my mom's watching. My mom's always supporting. I don't know if your mom watches you, but
my parents watch
I love it.
As many shows as they can.
I
love that because
Yep.
it's not like, I was always going to be in radio and know those traditional media circles. Podcasting is not a traditional route to go, but I've been doing radio and media for a long time, and this is as successful of a run as I've had. And so it's one of those things that the more you dive into it, it seems the more you have fun. And, it's a grind. Daily episodes, every game, as many as you can do, post game stuff, pre-game stuff. It's a grind, but I can't really imagine myself doing anything else.
Yeah, and if you're having fun doing it, I think that's where it all kind of brings it full circle for you, right? I mean, it would be a grind to be on sports radio, probably in Minnesota. I mean, you'd be essentially doing the same thing with maybe a crew, but
yeah,
I think that, you already kind of have that personality for it anyway. Great radio voice. So yeah, doing it on your own terms is kind of nice. I'm sure to be talking about your favorite sports clubs and especially hockey. I mean, that's kind of where a lot of life lies for myself, but yeah, I was also curious on, with the team dealing with some injuries last year. I still think a lot of guys had some real successful, points in their time on the team last year. So, Boldy, 29 goals, 40 assists for 69 points. I'm really high on Boldy. I think he's a great player. Joel Eriksson had a pretty monster season, 30 goals, 34 assists. And Kaprizov, a very not undervalued player, but I almost want to say undervalued because now he's a 3-time 40-goal scorer going for his 4th. Like, I'm thinking this guy has nothing but huge upside in his game and what he's going to provide to this team. And will they have the opportunity to, sign him again? And can they keep him in the city is, I think, what maybe some fans are a little worried about. You got Rossi again, didn't really perform offensively the best, 21 goals, 19 assists. Although, I mean, that's pretty good in today's league at 40 points. He was only a -4 for the season. And then you got your depth players, and not depth as they're, this guy's more of a power forward, but in Foligno, I mean, he's providing not only that leadership, that mentorship to the younger players, but he still had a pretty decent season at 10 goals, 12 assists for 22 points, but he was also a +10, for the season. So, to be in that positive mark is really challenging in today's league, right? In Johansson, 11 goals, 19 assists for 30 points, and Zuccarello, monster season, playmaker of the team, 12 goals, 51 assists for 63 points. So it seems like your top 6 is pretty solidified. What are you thinking on that bottom 6? Are you thinking they have enough there to, ultimately push them through this season and to get in that playoff spot, maybe even the wild card spot, or what are you kind of thinking there?
I think so. I think if you look at some of the things that went wrong for the Minnesota Wild last year, it's just that they had a ton of injuries and didn't really have enough players to be able to step into those types of roles. They basically were fielding an AHL roster
Mm-hmm.
from the bottom six down last year because Foligno got hurt and he ended up actually being shut down for the season. Fourth line was mostly traded, and so
Mm-hmm.
by the end of the season, like you got a bunch of guys that just aren't really talented enough to be like consistent NHLers, and they don't have anybody in the lineup this year that I think fits that bill. Like you've got a third line that's going to include Marcus Foligno, it's going to include Ryan Hartman, Yakov Trenin, who was the
Mm-hmm.
big offseason signing
Mm-hmm.
that the Wild brought in, and then fourth line you've got Murat Huznadinov, who I think is sitting on a sneaky good season this year because of just how fast he is, which
Mm-hmm.
means that he's going to be able to generate some opportunities. Um, One of his line mates, Jakub Lauko from the Boston Bruins,
Yep.
a guy who is just an absolute rocket out on the ice. He hits really hard, but he's got some sneaky good offense to his game too. And you got Freddie Gaudreau, who has at times been a second line center for this team in the past. Now, last year he was hurt quite a bit, just didn't produce at that same level. But I think in a fourth line role, there's going to be much less pressure on him. So he can just kind of go out there and do his thing. And so I think this team is going to not have the same thing happen that happened last year, which was, hey, we're going to create this super line after the All-Star break with Karill, Matt Boldy, Joel Eriksson Ek. We're going to get those three together, create what was, I think, the second best line in the NHL from then to the end of the season. Beyond that, the rest of the lineup kind of dried up. I don't get the sense that that is going to happen this year. Now, injury is the great equalizer.
Yep. Yep.
So if they deal with a bunch of injuries again this year, that could cause some problems. But you're also
Yep.
looking now at this team having some prospects that are ready to help. And so if you face injuries, Liam Ogren had a good enough camp that he made the team and is going to be with the team, at least for the early part of the season. He's a guy that can slot into a second or a third line role and can help you out no problem. Graham Clark, guy who they traded for from New Jersey, a really dynamic shot. And he was, I think, on track to be one of those last cuts until he got hurt in the preseason. He's another guy that can step in and can help you out. And so I think the depth for this team is going to be better to where if they do sustain injuries, they're better suited to handle them as opposed to last year where they just kind of threw their hands up and were like, what do we do? And just quick story on Matt Boldy because, I'll break the news here.
Yeah.
Talk to him for an episode that'll be airing tomorrow ahead of the season opener for the Wild. And I
Wow.
asked him, I'm like, look, you've quickly become one of the focal points on this team. How do you handle all that pressure and all those expectations? And he basically said, I like to look at it as an opportunity. Like, I don't look at it
Mm-hmm.
as pressure. I want to be out there, want to be the one who gets those chances. And in just looking at kind of what he did last year from the time that John Hines took over,
Mm-hmm.
I think he is going to have a monster season this year. Like, I don't think 40 goals, 80 points is out of the question.
I can agree with you there. I mean, just what he produced last year, and yeah, as long as everyone stays healthy, I don't think that's unimaginable by any means. To be honest with you, he's such a talented player, and especially depends on. I know you guys were kind of talking about the line mix, and yeah, it'll be interesting who they can kind of rotate in there to kind of help him get going. And I'm really excited about Boldy. He's one of my guys that I follow pretty consistently. And what's your kind of thoughts on the defensive pairing kind of going into this as well? So, obviously got Bogosian on there, Brodin, Chisholm, Faber, Merrill, Middleton. Spurgeon, I think, was the kind of that missing piece to finish off their season last year, with his leadership in that locker room. Obviously, he's still there. He's still probably going to games and, cheering on the boys and talking to them. But, with him coming back healthy, you know, is this really what we'll see this year? Is all right. Now we got these lines gelling. Now we got our defensive pairing down. This is what's going to get us a push. If as long as we stay healthy, we can make this run with our D pairing.
I think so. You hit it right on the head. Is I think the loss of Jared Spurgeon last year was really downplayed. Just the things that he does on the ice that lead to, I like to call them winning plays. They're not goals or assists or plus ones or anything like that. You don't get credit for just breaking up like a 2-on-1. Like there's no way to quantify that from a statistical category, but he's so good at those little things that make the difference between winning and losing a game. And I think from the leadership side of things too, he's going to be able to help just keep things in order. Like he got hurt in preseason, missed a bunch of the start of the season, and the Wild they got off to a terrible start. I think he can help just keep things pretty even keel. I think from the sounds of it, him and Jake Middleton will be slotting in as kind of that second pairing with Brock Faber and Jonas Brodin as your top pairing. Mm-hmm. The Faber-Brodin pairing last year, which was that was the primary partner for Brock Faber before all the injuries started to happen, was outrageously good. Like I think their goals against per 60 was under 2 as a pairing, which is pretty good. Yeah. But they can lean on those guys, and Jared Spurgeon and Jake Middleton, who also were a very good pairing when they had a chance to play together. They can really go with those two, and Zach Bogosian is a physical defenseman. Yeah. And, this is a team that is on the smaller side, and so you need a few of those guys that can help just keep people out from in front of the net or respond if somebody on the opposing team tries to thump one of the top guys. And whether it be Declan Chisholm or John Merrill, I think from the sounds of it, Chisholm is probably not going to play in the opener, but I'm sure we'll see him. It's a D pairing that I think is going to be much better than what we saw last year, because if there are injuries, they've got some prospects that are ready to help there too. So you aren't going to have these guys that you have to call up out of necessity to fill spots. But I think between that and the offense, I think there is the expectation that this team can do a lot better this year. The big key is going to be what happens between the net. Like that was that was a little bit of a mess last year. And if Philip Gustafson can rebound, he may not get to the level he was 2 years ago, but I think he's better than what he showed last year.
Yeah. Yeah, so I agree.
If he can hit that middle ground or maybe slightly more towards 2 years ago, this team is going to, you're talking about the difference between being like a clawing for a wild card spot or fighting for one of those top 3 spots.
Yeah. And that's kind of what I was going to touch on next is, with them and it's not just them. There's a few teams that are really going to try this tandem, if not trio kind of goaltending out for this year and really rotate through these guys and see kind of what sticks. It's not the past years where you'd have a goalie, playing upwards to 50, 60 games in a season and your backup maybe only see, a couple games for the season. We're talking about a lot more in today's NHL, really sticking with a duo. Will it work like they had in Boston, with Swayman and Allmark? Now that's separated. But yeah, with Gus, he was 20-18-4 with a 3.06 goals against average. I'm a little bit higher than kind of what I've seen, his previous averages. He was a .899. He had 3 shutouts, on top of that, which was nice. And then you had Flower, who was 17 and 15 and 5, 2.98, again, a little bit higher than we're used to seeing, Flower. But I mean, the guy's had a full on amazing career. He was at 8.95 with 2 shutouts. So yeah, I'm really curious on how that will look for this season for you guys once they kind of get a goaltender that's sticking and really gelling with the team. And will they just end up going to a duo system at some point in the season? And I ended up forgetting right in your third goalie there, but I know you.
That would be Jesper Wallstedt, the
Yes, yes.
wonderful Uber prospect for the Minnesota Wild. And actually, I hadn't done a ton of thinking about this because, all the talk has been, how is a 3 goalie rotation going to work? I think the hope, I gotta shout out the Clayton Stoner comment in the chat. That's an elite Minnesota Wild from years past reference. Yeah, Clayton Stoner, A plus.
Yeah.
I think the hope for the Minnesota Wild this year for Bill Guerin is that Jesper is going to take that second spot. Like, I think this isn't anything that has been said publicly, but there's been a lot of talk about, we've got Marc-Andre Fleury as the number 2 guy. Jesper's going to come in as the 3. We're going to work him in and give him an opportunity to learn from Fleury and to get some valuable reps in at the NHL level. I think the team is hoping that Jesper will take that spot, and by some point during the season, we'll be saying, okay, Jesper is he's good to go, because the hope is that he's going to be the goalie of the future. And so he's going to need reps at the NHL level. He got 3 games last year, kind of got hung out to dry against Dallas, but after that, he shut out Chicago and beat the San Jose Sharks. So I think the hope is that he rises to the occasion. If he doesn't, they've still got Marc-Andre Fleury here for the rest of the season. And so as much as it seems kind of weird to go 3 goalie rotation, it's happened in the past here and there, but it requires a pretty big buy-in from all 3 guys to make it work. And maybe Fleury has kind of realized, hey, this is my last shot. It'd be pretty cool to be able to see the guy of the future be able to step into this role and to thrive in it, even though that's going to probably mean less games for him. Mm-hmm. It's probably the biggest question mark for this season is just how is this going to play out?
Yeah, no, I think it's great that you have, a couple of veteran goalies for him to ultimately feed off of. What I was going to ask you kind of about Fleury is, during the season, you think we're going to more see him, more make that goodbye round? And what I mean by that is will we see him just play against certain teams? So I know he got kind of, not bench, but he didn't get to play against Pittsburgh when they played him. That was a huge controversy. Like, how are you not going to play? He won 3 cups there. I mean, technically won by himself. And then I think, Matt Murray ultimately kind of took over for the final 2. But do you think that's going to kind of play out where, yes, he'll be heavily involved in practice, getting Wallstedt ready, and have obviously, Gus Bus really try and help out there and mentor Wallstedt? Or do you think he'll have a pretty significant role, during this season? And I would imagine that would depend on what kind of run they're going on, how they start off the season, where they're looking at, about January, during the 4 Nations kind of break, just a little after that time. I think that's in February, if I'm not mistaken, or somewhere around there. So, yeah, what do you kind of think there? Do you think, just like you said, a minimum role, maybe, let's see, he played a decent amount. Are you thinking 10, 15 games total, or what are you thinking?
So this is interesting because Bill Guerin has said that he feels like Fleury is still capable of being like almost a 30 start guy.
I do too.
at this
I
point
do too.
in his career. I mean, look, he keeps himself in incredible shape.
Yes.
There's nobody that preps harder. It's just I think a lot of us assume that the higher up there in age you get, the harder it is to be able to do that over and over and over again. And the assumption too is that as you go as a goalie, as you get older, it takes you a little longer to bounce back between
Hmm.
starts.
Hmm.
So I think the plan is fluid, but I think I think Jesper is the contingency with all of this. If Fleury is still productive and is still able to, help this team out, if they're in the mix for a playoff spot, I think he's going to get, he'll probably get somewhere in the 25 to 30 starts range for this team again. But if they fall out of it, I think, as we have seen in the past, I think that's when you see the younger players start to get more time. Um, I know there are a couple of teams on this road trip that the Wild are going on to start the season that he played. I think Pittsburgh's on that trip.
Hmm.
And so I wouldn't surprise me if he plays there. Um, Vegas at some point will come up
Hmm.
again. So it's going to be interesting to see. And I think Bill Guerin kind of wants to see how it plays out to start. Like if he has some clunkers right off the bat, maybe then you say, okay, for your next turn, we're going to go to Jesper and give him a chance and see where
Hmm.
we're at. Um, I think the one thing you can really count on this year is that Philip Gustafson's going to get a bulk of those starts, but beyond that, I think both of the other two are going to be in the mix.
No, I love it. I love it. I feel the same way about Garen. I still think I see flashes of brilliance when he played even last year, even though and again, kind of like my point earlier with Spurgeon being out and really kind of changing that dynamic on defense and even missing a couple other key guys during the season. I really think he would have had a better opportunity in net, and his record would reflect that ultimately. Because he's still fast, he's still quick. You can tell the guy's in shape. Like you said, takes it very seriously. Clearly he's got a great training regimen during the off season to get him prepared, and he's really going to go down as one of the all-time great goalies in modern day era hockey. And I love the guy. I think he's got a great personality for the game of hockey as well. But yeah, I would love to see him get a few starts. I really want to see him play against Pittsburgh and see how that goes. But no, I kind of yeah, I was more curious on your take on them having the three. I know a couple teams are kind of in that scenario as well. I know that Calgary is going to end up dealing with kind of the same until they figure out who their top two are. Even Detroit here locally is kind of in that same boat. With some of the moves they made off season and them ultimately losing Jack Campbell to the player assistance program. So I think that changes a dynamic in a team when you have the three goalies. But I was gonna also ask you, we kind of touched on in the beginning of the show, your division isn't the easiest. Like we're up against some teams here. Like, how's this gonna play out for the season? Again, Hawks are gonna be a battle, but I think it's gonna be, like playing the Jets, the Preds, the Stars, the Avs, Utah. I mean, again, good young team. I think they're going to have a little bit of fire under them for their inaugural season. So I think we saw that in game one of their opening night was pretty impressive. But if Avs get Landeskog back at some point in the season, I think that changes the dynamic. I know Nishushkin's not going to play. Um, because of what he's dealing with, and will we see him return and really make that team a dynamic force? I got a lot of friends in the chat that are Abs bros as well. So, yeah, I'm kind of curious your thoughts on what that division really looks like against them. Obviously, we do have to take into account the rest of the league that they're playing, but individual or in division play is, really comes down to it a lot, because they play him so much. So what are you kind of thinking there and some of the teams you have to face for this upcoming season?
I fully expect that the Central Division is going to have 5 playoff teams this year. I think it's just you've got, obviously, I rank them like this. I have Dallas at the top because of the
Mm-hmm.
depth. I put them
Mm-hmm.
at number one. Then maybe there's a little bit of a separation, and I put Nashville and Colorado in the same category.
Mm-hmm.
The top six that those two teams roll at you is amongst the best in the league. But I do have some questions about the bottom six for both the Avs and the Predators. So I put them slightly below, little bit of a separation, and then Winnipeg. I have no idea what to expect from Winnipeg this year. They
Mm-hmm.
feel like a team that, they honestly, it kind of feels like they hit what is the best case scenario for their roster last year. And so
Mm-hmm.
do they take a step back this year? It remains to be seen. I can't pull them too far down because of Connor Hellebuck,
Yeah.
but he has to do a lot of heavy lifting for that team. So I put them fourth, and then I think 5, 6, and 7, St. Louis, Minnesota, and Utah are in the same sort of we're all going to be fighting for a playoff spot, and who ends up getting it is going to be interesting because you look at the Pacific, you've got the Los Angeles Kings, you've got Seattle, you got a lot of teams over there that are going to be angling for a spot,
Mm-hmm.
and if just 3 come out of the Pacific, that makes those 2 spots that much tighter for everybody else that is battling. It's going to be incredibly tight. My wish this year, because I just saw the number again, and the Minnesota Wild over the span of last year, they won 1 game against teams named Dallas, Colorado, Winnipeg, and Nashville the entire season. If you are expecting to be a playoff team, you can't do that. And this is where you have to scratch and claw for those extra points. Like if you play
Mm-hmm.
Winnipeg 4 times, you got to win your home games and you got to try to split on the road. Like you have to improve from going 0-4 to you got to at least go 2-2. Same thing
Mm-hmm.
against
Yeah.
Colorado. Like those Colorado
Splitting
games
the
are
series.
those
Yeah.
Colorado games are usually tighter, but you still got to find a way to win them. And for me, honestly, after what's happened the last couple of seasons, I would just like to see competitive games against Dallas
Mm-hmm.
because they're going in the wrong direction against the Stars. Like last year, I think it was 8-3, 7-0. I think they had 1 game where they lost 5-1. Like let's get those out of there.
Yeah.
But those that's for everybody that kind of asks me in passing, how does this team go from not making the playoffs to making the playoffs? You got to fight against those teams above you in the standings. You got to show that you belong in that conversation. And so health, better depth, secondary scoring, if that second line really stays consistent this year, they certainly can do it.
Yeah.
But, now that the season has started, you just got to go out there and show it.
And their home opener is against who this season? And are they starting Gus Bus?
The Columbus Blue Jackets are coming to town. Dean Evison back at the X after being fired last year. So that is a narrative that will be coursing through the X as the game's going on.
Yeah.
From the sounds of it, it'll be Philip Gustafsson. And I think that's the right decision. He's going to be your, at minimum, 1A.
Yeah.
And so he's the one that starts the first game of the season. Obviously, Columbus is dealing with a lot after the death of Johnny and Matty Gaudreau.
Yeah.
So they're obviously going to have heavy hearts in this game. It's going to be very emotional at the X. But for the Wilds, it's a home game. It's one of 2 home games before you go on the road for the entire rest of the month. Got to defend home ice. And so, you got to get off on the right foot, but getting off on the right foot doesn't necessarily ensure success because last year the Wild beat the eventual Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers 2-0 at the X. And then after that, they lost. I think they won 2 games the rest of the month.
Wow.
So got to get off to a good start in these first 2 home games, and we'll see if we can.
way to start this season off with 2 home games, and then the rest of the month you're traveling outside of that, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's not not a very fun way to start, but hopefully it's something that will really be able to kick him in gear for the rest of the season and give him that upfront challenge and like, all right, this is what we're going for this year to make that playoff spot. And this is their ultimate test to start off the season. So it'll be very interesting to see, what they do. I know my family's that's in Minnesota is they're big fans, and I know they'll be rooting on the team and they want them to do well. They got one of the best crests in the league, as you can see. I mean, come on now.
One of the
No,
best
I'm
crests and one of the
yeah.
best players in the league too, and
Oh,
Kirill Kaprizov.
he's so amazing. I'm really excited about this guy. I'm I'm really excited to see if he's going to hit that 50 goal mark. I mean, 46. He came so close, almost 100-point season. Was an absolute beast last year. Really, ever since he's broken in the league, this guy's been dominant and just seems to get better and better and better as he plays. So I'm very excited to kind of see what he can do. Yeah, I got a little small PC of him. Of course, I collect cards. So yeah, of course that I don't sell, but just collect as a collector standpoint. But no, he's an amazing player. And is he going to be paired up with Eck and Boldy, or what's the first couple lines? I know you talked about it on your show, but just to kind of maybe go over that again. And
Yeah, so the sounds of it are that Marco Rossi and Matt Zuccarello are going to be his line mates to start the season. Rossi's looked really good, and I think that was part of the thought for this season was Rossi was able to put up 21 goals, and the rest of his line did nothing. Like, he didn't have consistent line mates with him, and so you throw him on Karill's line. They have good chemistry from previous. Matt Zuccarello was tied for the lead in points with Joel Eriksson Ek this preseason with 8. So I think playing with Kirill Kaprizov is going to kind of help get him going too. Matt Boldy and Joel Eriksson Ek have previously played together. So they're going to be the anchors of the second line, at least to start the season. The big wild card is going to be, what does Marcus Johansson do as the wing for that line? A couple of years ago, that combination absolutely lit it on fire after Johansson was acquired via trade. This past year did not work out with the same level of chemistry. So if he can get back to where he was when he was acquired via trade, that's going to help tremendously. But this is where this kind of comes into, if guys aren't pulling their weight in the lineup, then you may see some of those prospects get a chance. Guys like Liam Ogren, Graham Clark, maybe another. So I think Johansson's going to be given some time to see if he can find it again. But if not, I think we're going to see that spot become an audition for whoever else can step in and take it.
Yeah, I remember you kind of bringing up the Clark, in your show as well, and you seem to be pretty high in him. And yeah, I mean, if they're not proving their point, I mean, at some point you got to get some of these young guys in the mix and see, hey, is this going to change the dynamic on our team in the right direction, for us to make that push. And no, I thought it was a good show. Like, who's the partner you were on? I forget his name. My apologies.
So that was Zach Zeman,
Yeah.
who is
Okay.
he's one of our. I've got a nice regular rotation of guests that hop on to talk about different bits. I like to kind of mix it up because obviously you want to go out and get the heavy hitters as much as you can,
Yeah.
like your Matt Boldies, but it's fun to have kind of that fan persona really play out, because I think guests find it more relatable if you've got people that cover the team but are still fans themselves. And so I like to kind of evenly balance to try to get perspectives of both. But yeah, he's A+, and it just leads to a really, really fun show that, you wake up and you're excited about what you're going to talk about that day, and makes it way easier for people to listen to.
Yeah, no, I thought you guys really, really a good combo. I've really noticed in the Locked On world that like some inner um, kind of shows. So it seems like you guys send me to team up during the season as well. So I've seen that and I love that. I mean, yeah, why not talk to another Locked On host and talk about that game's if it's coming up between you guys. I think that's great, and I think it adds a little extra dynamic. So yeah, I thought it was a great show today, and had to do definitely have to get my listen in. I mean, I was having you on after all, and definitely want to hear what you say. And I ultimately appreciate you taking the time and definitely coming on the show, and means a lot to me. Again, just a guy that likes to talk hockey. I mainly do cards on my channel, but um, you know, this is ultimately something I would love to do. It's not the easiest to reach out. You guys are busy. You got your own show, but I've had a few nice positive responses of people willing to come on. I'm trying to get obviously a few family members on that have actually played professional hockey. Think it'd be really cool to kind of get their perspective on what that really looks like. And I've been fortunate enough to meet players in my life, and they've been nothing but amazing. And
Oh
I
yeah.
like that. And I like that you have kind of a go-to guy on the team, and you're not completely shut out in that aspect as well, because I think it does add a little bit extra dynamic when you're in the mix. Like I'm assuming you go to some games during the season and get to kind of do some post interviews, or how's that look for you, like with your show?
Yeah, so it's interesting because, I do have credentials to go to the games at the X, and I try to take advantage of that as much as I can. Trying a new thing this year, in doing my post game, like the moment or shortly thereafter that the game is done, just to try to really play on that immediacy. But I like to then, since I don't do a ton of post game type interviews, I save those for other during the week
Mm-hmm.
type things. But if a player talks and says something notable after the game, I certainly will work that into my post game. It's nice to try to get everybody's reaction from a fan perspective, like the moment the game gets done while it's fresh.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be interesting to see how it works out. But yeah, it's fun to have those doors open, and to be able to utilize some of that. Like I interviewed Brandon Duhaime a couple of times
Yeah.
last year. I've talked to a handful of Iowa players. And so, the more you do it, it seems like the more doors that open, and just makes it a lot more fun.
Yeah, because it really, does bring a different aspect to the show. I mean, obviously, you can tell you're talking about the team. You're really knowledgeable about it, but it, you're the fans ultimately like, hey man, well, like when's he gonna have a player on, or are we hearing from a player? Like, what's going on here? So it adds that little extra touch, like you said, to your average fan or your hardcore fan, and really wanting to know like, hey, what's going on, tell me about Boldy, or because I did have Locked on Golden Knights, and he seemed to have a connection with the team as well. I'm sure Chris. I don't know if you guys
Oh yeah.
interacted before. Yeah, and so he'll usually talk about Thompson, and I think that's awesome. I think that brings a whole different dynamic to the show. Yeah, I've met a couple players, but no one on any recent rosters, I guess per se, except for Patrick Kane. He was super nice to me, and let me tell you,
Wow.
that was amazing. There's a whole story we can talk about backstage if you got a minute or two, but I have a good story about that. And met Ryan Kessler, James Wisniewski, Chris Connor. Had the awesome privilege to meet those guys. Kessler's a local guy here in Michigan, and he was really nice too. Went to actually a local high school, our rivalry. Mike Madonna's parents live not too far from here. I don't know if they live there anymore, but I've seen his mom walk the dog when we were in high school. Yep. Yep. I know he's a North Stars legend. And I knew it was her, Seth, because who walks their little, uh, I don't even know what kind of dog it was. Maybe a Cocker Spaniel, or maybe like it was a small dog with an NHLPA jacket on, which is only licensed to players and family members. And I knew 100% that it was Miss Madonna. And me and my buddy were sitting on the porch just freaking out, like, that's Mike's mom. You know that, right? He's,
Wow.
yeah. So I've met Nick Lidstrom on a personal level. I had a coworker whose son was playing hockey at a local rink, and we asked if we could go up there. So, yeah, I absolutely love that you mix. It'd be cool if you could get one on the show one time to do an interview for your show. But no, I appreciate it, man. Like I said, I won't keep you too long. I keep it kind of short and sweet, and definitely appreciate your show. I definitely want you to give a plug, when you're on, what time you're on. I know you're on pretty much every day, but please go ahead and kind of take the main stage and tell everyone when you're on and when they can expect to see you.
Well, I appreciate you having me on. First off, I always enjoy. I don't get a chance to do it as much as I'd like. I always enjoy hopping on other shows to get the chance to kind of hop in the guest chair for a change, because I love hosting, but I like talking hockey,
Yeah.
and so I like to kind of have others ask questions that then I can answer. So this was a lot of fun. And if you ever want to have me back on, don't hesitate to reach out.
Oh,
I'm
thanks,
happy to
man.
do it.
I
Um,
appreciate that.
for those on this show that want to hear more Locked On Wild, I've got good news for you. We do episodes every day, and I typically record the night before, and so I try to have them posted the next morning. But that it depends on if there's games. It depends on if
Mhm.
there's news that breaks. Sometimes I like to, if we get into the season, sometimes on Mondays I like to wait till later just to see if there's any news that breaks, to make sure that we get it on there. But we've got regular episodes throughout the week. We'll have pregame episodes pretty much every game this year. We've got the live postgame shows. We have another feature that I'm going to be doing this year called Three Things, where I take the post-game press conference from John Hines and I break it down, the three
Oh,
biggest,
very cool.
the three biggest things that were talked about in the post-game. I like to break that down quite a bit. And we're going to be doing some PWHL coverage throughout the year. So
Champions.
we got you covered there too. It's a heavy undertaking, but I take it very seriously in that I want to do the content and I want to make sure that the listeners get as much as they can handle. And I have a lot of fun doing it. So it's like, if you have fun doing it, it's not work at all. So I
No,
just keep
I
firing episodes out there.
I couldn't agree more. So hold on, let me touch on something real quick since you said it. Does that mean that Seth is going to be the official PWHL correspondent and locked on Minnesota, or what?
Uh,
Is that what we're thinking here?
that might garner an eyeball emoji for sometime down the road, but I'm
Okay.
fortunate to be pretty good friends with one of the broadcasters,
Okay.
Alexis Pearson. So her and I were just chatting in the off season, and I thought, this would be great. We
Yes.
should do some sort of like a once a week
Yes.
bonus episode strictly for the PWHL. And so I
Oh,
talked to the network about it. They loved it. So we're
that's
gonna
fantastic.
we're gonna have
Working
you
out the
covered
fine.
all
Okay.
season.
That is awesome. That is really cool. Yeah, what a great idea. To have a broadcaster, someone who's
Yeah.
covering Minnesota hockey right now, to really collaborate. That's amazing. Congrats. Hopefully that works out and we see that on your channel for Locked On Wild. And yeah, definitely appreciate you coming out. I'll kind of say bye to the chat before we take off here. So Sith, Barry, Lon, Alex, appreciate you. Papa and Baby Bear, definitely appreciate you coming out. Mom, my Aunt Barb, I know are watching as well. Dave C. Yeah, Uncanny Swag. Let me scroll up. Logan, G.I. Joe Gamer, Rocky Hockey. He's a huge Avs bro, so a little bit against your team, but huge hockey fan, always ripping some great cards. Budget Rips, thanks so much for coming out. He's a local here in Michigan, so it was really cool to see him. In the box, my best friend Paul, again, diehard fan. If I got him on the show, he could spit back and forth with you a lot better than I can. Zach, thanks so much for coming out. And yeah, this is it for this. Again, thank you so much, Seth. Really appreciate it. Go check out every day Locked On Wild. You won't regret it. It's an awesome show. Check out today's episode when you get some time, and we'll definitely see you in the next one. Appreciate it. Thank you so much.